felt in the Maronite collective consciousness, there's fear of Muslim invasion, and they wanted protection in their own state. If you want to know more, I can link to a live stream that I did talking about Lebanon. The strong feeling of the Arabs of the East against any French control. And as I said, I'm going to have to do some research as to why the French were so opposed. The fear on the part of many Christians of Muslim domination. Okay, fair enough. And the lack of as vigorous Assyrian national feeling as could be desired. Remember, they've been under the Ottomans for a long time. So the idea of Assyria that was a country as opposed to a region and a territory was new. We recommend that the unity of Syria be preserved in accordance with the earnest petition of the great majority of the people of Syria. The territory concerned is too limited, the population too small, and the economic, geographic, racial, and language unity too manifest to make the setting up of independent states within its boundaries desirable. If such division can possibly be avoided, the country is very largely Arab in language, culture, traditions, and customs. So King Crane recommended against the partition of Syria into 3 different countries, which is what ended up happening. We recommend, in the 5th place, serious modification of the extreme Zionist program for Palestine of unlimited immigration of Jews, looking finally to making Palestine distinctly a Jewish state. And if King and Crane had known about the Israel lobby, they would have known this is where the report was going to be completely ignored from this point on. We know that now, but now you can read all of the horrible anti-Semitic stuff that follows, quote unquote. The commissioners began their study of Zionism with minds predisposed in its favor, but the actual facts in Palestine, coupled with the force of the general principles proclaimed by the Allies and accepted by the Syrians, have driven them to the recommendation here made. As I say, people have ideas, they go to Palestine, they talk to the locals, and they change their mind. Nobody ever goes to Palestine, talks to the locals, and then says, oh, the Zionists are right. That's always what happens. Look, back here in 1919, they thought, yes, I'm generally predisposed to like Zionism. I go, I find out it's not such a great idea. The commission was abundantly supplied with literature on the Zionist program by the Zionist Commission to Palestine, heard in conferences much concerning the Zionist colonies and their claims, and personally saw something of what had been accomplished. They found much to approve in the aspirations and plans of the Zionists and had warm appreciation for the devotion of many of the colonists and for their success by modern methods in overcoming natural obstacles. The Commission recognized also that definite encouragement had been given to the Zionists by the Allies in Mr. Balfour's often quoted statement and its approval by other representatives of the Allies. If, however, the strict terms of the Balfour statement are adhered to, favoring the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights existing in non-Jewish communities in Palestine. So he's just quoting directly from the declaration. It can hardly be doubted that the extreme Zionist program must be greatly modified, if we're going to accept the Balfour statement at its word. A national home for the Jewish people is not equivalent to making Palestine into a Jewish state, nor can the erection of such a Jewish state be accomplished without the gravest trespass upon the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine. The fact came out repeatedly in the Commission's conference with Jewish representatives that the Zionists look forward to a practical complete dispossession of the present non-Jewish inhabitants of Palestine by various forms of purchase. So let's even take the most peaceful and benefit of the doubt, you could say, perspective. They're going to buy all of Palestine. And that's how they were going to get the land, despite the fact that that had not had a lot of progress up until 1919. So they were presenting them with something that wasn't realistic. In his address of July the 4th, 1918, President Wilson laid down the following principle as one of the 4 great ends for which the associated peoples of the world are fighting. The settlement of every question, whether of territory, of sovereignty, of economic arrangement, or of political relationship, upon the basis of the free acceptance of that settlement by the people immediately concerned, and not upon the basis of the material interest or advantage of any other nation or people which may desire a different settlement for the sake of its own exterior influence or mastery. If that principle is to rule, and so the wishes of Palestine's population are to be decisive as to be what is to be done with Palestine, then it is to be remembered that the non-Jewish population of Palestine, nearly 9/10 of the whole, are emphatically against the entire Zionist program, 90%. Tables show that there was no one thing upon which the population of Palestine was more agreed upon than this: to subject a people so minded to unlimited Jewish immigration and to steady financial and social pressure to surrender the land would be a gross violation of the principle just quoted and of the people's rights, though it kept within the forms of law. I can't say it any better myself. It is to be noted also that the feeling against the Zionist program is not confined to Palestine, but shared very generally by the people throughout Syria, as our conferences clearly showed. More than 72%, 1,350 in all, of all the petitions in the whole of Syria were directed against the Zionist program. Only 2 requests, those for a united Syria and for independence, had a larger support. This general feeling was voiced by the General Syrian Congress in the 7th, 8th, and 10th resolutions of the statement, of which I think I read some. The peace conference should not shut its eyes to the fact that the anti-Zionist feeling in Palestine and Syria is intense and not lightly to be flouted. No British officer consulted by the commissioners believed that the Zionist program could be carried out except by force of arms. The officers generally thought that a force of not less than 50,000 soldiers would be required even to initiate the program. That of itself is evidence of a strong sense of the injustice of the Zionist program. Yeah, you need 50,000 soldiers to do what you want. On the part of the non-initial claim, often submitted by Zionist representatives, that they have a right to Palestine based on an occupation of 2,000 years ago, can hardly be seriously considered. Oh, again, cancelable offense to say something like that today.
Thank
There
you.
is a further consideration that cannot be justly ignored if the world is to look forward to Palestine becoming a definitely Jewish state, however gradually that may take place. This consideration grows out of the fact that Palestine is the holy land for Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike. Millions of Christians and Muslims all over the world are quite as much concerned as the Jews with conditions in Palestine, especially with those conditions which touch upon religious feeling and rights. The relations in these matters in Palestine are most delicate and difficult. With the best possible intentions, it may be doubted whether the Jews could possibly seem to either Christians or Muslims proper guardians of the holy places, or custodians of the Holy Land as a whole. And this is something that Herzl put forward in The Jewish State. I'll put a link to that in the video, and if I've got room for a card. The reason is this: the places which are most sacred to Christians, those having to do with Jesus, and which are also sacred to Muslims, are not only not sacred to Jews, but abhorrent to them. It is simply impossible under those circumstances for Muslims and Christians to feel satisfied to have these places in Jewish hands or under the custody of Jews. There are still other places about which Muslims must have the same feeling. In fact, from this point of view, the Muslims, just because the sacred places of all 3 religions are sacred to them, have made very naturally much more satisfactory custodians of the holy places than the Jews could be. It must be believed that the precise meaning in this respect of the complete Jewish occupation of Palestine has not been fully sensed by those who urge the extreme Zionist program, for it would intensify, with a certainty like fate, the anti-Jewish feeling both in Palestine and in all other portions of the world which look to Palestine as the Holy Land. Sounds like a warning, sounds like a prophecy,